affections of my heart be acceptable to you, Holy One, my rock and my Redeemer. Please be seated. Our dear Amanda has just returned from a long voyage, and yet she was able to take the time to prepare a chesped, a eulogy for our Reuven. We'll hear Amanda's words, and then we'll have time for other people to share as well, for anyone who wants to share.
Well, I just wanted to say a few words. That sometimes there are people that come in our lives. Can you hear me? There are people that are part of our lives that tell you, their involvement in that life tells you that if they hadn't been in your life, you might not be where you are now. And sometimes you call those people shliachs, they're sent. So, about 25 years ago, I wasn't going to Temple Bethel. I was what you call a Jew for Jesus, and I was going to church. And I often occupied myself on various times giving out little flyers to people on the plaza with my good friend Abby. And maybe some of you run into her, but she's no longer in this area. One day she called me up excitedly. She said, Amanda, guess what? I ran into this guy at the Arcata Hotel. And I said, do you know Jesus? That's what she asked everyone. And he said, no, I'm Jewish. And she said, that doesn't matter. My best friend is Jew. and it was Reuven. He said, so where can I meet her? And Abby said, well, you come to Arcata First Baptist Church tomorrow. I'll make sure she's there at 10:15 or whatever time it was. So she said, here's an opportunity. So I did go to church, and I saw him, and she was excited, that guy. And then after the service, we walked out into the parking lot, and Reuven said hello and introduced himself. And then he said, so you're here. Is this mazel? And do you know what a mishpacha is? Where's your mishpacha? And he just started talking to me in Yiddish, which I hadn't heard in quite a while with the company I was keeping. So sometime before that, I had placed an ad in the local Tri-City Advertiser because I was kind of getting interested in my roots, and the ad said, Jewish believers in what we sometimes call Yashka, J-E-S-U-S, please call Amanda. We could have a gathering, something like that. So I had like a little gathering back at the schoolhouse, and so Reuven was very charming, and it felt like something was reaching way down in my soul meeting Reuven. So there were maybe 5 or 6 Jewish people equally in a similar situation to myself, and we met, and then Reuven came on the scene, and we invited him. He came over, he taught us, he was like a rabbi. He taught us a prayer for Al Nitilat Yadayim. He taught us, some of us that didn't know, the Hamotzi, and he'd come and lead a Friday night Jewish service to these little lost, I think they were all women, Jewish women in Eureka. This was 1994, possibly. And he got his little following. People were pretty taken with him. And then somebody said, maybe he could teach us some Hebrew. He taught us the alphabet. And then one day, he was also studying with somebody that was a temple member, Ray Ekman, that some of you may know, that did that beautiful Yud Hey Vav Hey. And he invited this whole group over to her house. By that time, she was not driving on Shabbat. he invited us over to study Torah with Ray Ekman. And some of the people that were hanging around us didn't have much sechel, they didn't have much sense. So after that little meeting, she called Reuven. She said, "Who are those people you brought to my house? Where'd they come from?" She was used to studying on her own, pretty much, and then all of a sudden 6 or 7 people showed up. And he said, "I'll get back to you and let you know." And so Ray Ekman decided to call the Chabad rabbi and ask for advice, because she told him they were people that went to church that were born Jewish. And the Chabad rabbi said, "You should never turn somebody away from your Shabbat table, but find out who the leader was and make sure they don't come." So we're meeting at my house. That was me. But the story didn't end there. And Reuven, the blessed man that he was, he continued to say hello, continued to say his Yiddish greetings, and he continued to associate with us. Well, at least 2 of those people now are back in Yiddishkeit. But I want to say that every time I saw Reuven after that, 25 years ago, I said, Reuven would say, "How are you? And how's your daughter Anna? And how's your son?" And, "Oh, she had a child." I said, that was due to you, Reuven. You know, if you hadn't have shown up, if you hadn't have gone where people are sometimes afraid to go, I might have stayed there. And he was always like very humble, but he said, "You know, I know." And he smiled. And one time he told me, he said, "You know, there's a rumor that there's 36 righteous people in the world called Lamed Bavnik." And I asked him, "Do you think you might be one of them?" He said, "Yeah, they're not supposed to know, but the purity of his ways, as so many of you pointed out, made me want to believe that he was, for that particular time, a Lamed Bavnik." And so I just went and did a mitzvah in Reuven's name in the park, cleaning up the park, and I came across Osha, who generously gave me some of Reuven's items, and he generously gave me something to remember him by, which is this kippah. And I just want to suggest that the mitzvah we do for Reuven don't have to stop today. That you can always carry around your gloves and your garbage bags. You can clean up something or give somebody that's thirsty something to drink. Because all you have to ask yourself, what would Reuven do? And I think he'd be cleaning the park with us. I think he'd be stopping to help a homeless person. And so Reuven's legacy and memory, may it continue with each mitzvah you do in his memory and honor. And I was very sad to be in Israel when I heard the news. But in a way, I felt like, I'm supposed to be here because he would be here. He'd be so glad to be here. And we were in Sfat, which is a place where he would very much enjoy being. And a message came on Facebook, someone needs to write his obituary. And I wrote it from Sfat. And Reuven's spirit is so alive. He's like that whole rest of that time in Israel. I felt he was there. I knew how he'd be overjoyed. I knew how he'd be happy. I knew kind of what he'd say. And certainly, though his body isn't here, his life and his passing and his continual presence really is a comfort and makes me believe that our lives do not end with what we do right here, but they continue by people remembering us and the neshama being brought into this very place in existence. So I thank you for honoring our good friend, and may his memory be for a blessing.
We have time for anybody who wants to come. Please share Reuven's stories. It's so wonderful to hear them. But don't be shy, but come this way so everybody can hear you.
I still don't feel like it's real. I still keep thinking I see Reuven everywhere. I see somebody riding a bike. I see somebody walking down the street. It's like, oh, there's Reuven. And it is Reuven. It is Reuven, because I don't feel like he's gone. I know he's gone, and I'm just thinking about his hands. I've been thinking about his hands a lot lately. He had the most beautiful hands. I feel like mine are like these chunky things, and they're fine. They do what they need to do. And Reuven had delicate hands. He had these beautiful hands, and when he was clapping or excited, it was like I just wanted to watch his hands. They were so beautiful. He had the most beautiful hands, and so many little things about him that were unique to him. But it's like they were so alive and full of him. And I feel like the veil between here and there has been shifted since he crossed over, and that it's just thinner, which is a good thing, that we can have more access to heaven, because he's one man, but his soul was so big, and he affected so many people, that he had no idea. I don't think he now knows, but it's like a pyramid, like here he is, he went that way, it's like a wedge, and then this huge swath is open now to us, like Rabbi Eli and Rabbi Naomi's talked about Elul, that the gates of heaven open. And so I feel like Reuven is pushing open the gates for all of us, and it's our job to see him everywhere and to be him everywhere. And I mean, I don't play guitar, but I know he did. I know he did beautiful things with his hands, and I've said a lot about him, and I just miss him, but I just still feel like he's here.
Right.
And I hope that feeling continues, because the world without him is just not the same.
Right.
And we all have been touched by him, and I want him here with me forever. So I just feel like he's opening those gates for us, and the veil is thinner, and we need that, because the world needs us to be with Reuven's energy, full of his sparks. So.
Amen.
Lisa Duran.
So we live in Southern Humboldt, and my husband and I, and we moved here 25 years ago, also in '94. And a lot of Temple Bethel members used to come down. Rabbi Naomi, which is still our part-time rabbi, she used to be more, often down there. And a lot of you folks that I'm looking at used to come down. And I met a lot of you that way. And Reuven used to come down, and that's when I met him. And he was just really a beam of light. You talked about that energy. He was a beam of light. Yes, he was a nice-looking man, and he had great hands, but he was just exuberated this energy. And I love the fact that I would run into him in really odd places. There he was. I'm like, what are you doing here? And it was like strange. I would never think that, but then again, he was there. And I'm like, okay, I guess this makes sense. And, it was like weird that I was there, but I happened to be there, and then he was there. And I love the fact that whenever I ran into him, he always would share his enlightenment with me. He would always be, I'm sure a lot of you that knew him, he was like, he just went through this incredible thing, whether the Chabad house or on a camping trip or whatever it was. And we would only visit for like 5 to 10 minutes. But he would go into it, and the fact that he wanted to share it with me, and he wanted me to do it. He wanted to turn you on to it. He'd be like, no, you've got to do this, Lisa, and I'm like, okay, and we're like a co-op, but he would, we'd stand there and it would be high intensity, and he would get so into it, and he really would care about me and experiencing it. He wanted me to be a better person, and he's just like, no, you don't even realize you've got to do this. This is, and it was something, I had a young child, he's like, you got to go, and I'm thinking, it's not going to happen, but I got it through him, and that was really beautiful. And I miss him too, even though I didn't see him all that often. But when I did, it was so full of love and vibrance. And like I said, it started when I moved here in '94. And I felt really close to him, and he really cared about me, and I really cared about him. And the last time I saw him was in June at the Summer Arts and Music Festival. And I work at K-Med Radio, and we had you might have heard it on our broadcast. We broadcasted live, and we're always there every year, close to the stage. And I coordinated it this year, so I had a bigger role than just doing interviews like I normally do. So I couldn't really get out as much as I did. I was pretty much there at the booth. But this time I said, I don't recall what band it was. I think it was the Last Beach, Long Beach Dub All-Stars, the last band, Long Beach Dub All-Stars, and I really wanted to go check them out. So it was only one of the few bands that I was able to go see. So I go up there, and I'm by myself, and I go up front, and I'm really getting into it, and I look over, and there's Reuven, and he's totally grooving. And so I went over to him, we hugged, and there was love energy, and he tried talking like he normally does, and I so could not hear him. And I'm just like, I can't hear you. And it was loud, and he's like, okay. So we stood there and danced together, and then I said, I love you, whatever, and I had to get back to the booth. So I only had like a song, but he was really into it. You guys know him with music. And he was just, being Reuven-like. And that was the last time I saw him. And I just love him, and I still love him. And like you said, the concept that I went also to pick up trash in honor of him, and I got to know this gal I thought is so sweet, and we really bonded. And I was under tables, and I was really going for it. And the concept of it is really I just can't believe I'm not going to run into him again. And so I really loved him. And thanks for allowing everybody to come up and talk, because thank you for bringing all these wonderful Temple Bethel. And now I'm a member here as well as B'nai Haaretz. So I'm sure I know a lot of you. So thank you. And thank you, Reuven.
Beautiful stories.
Some of you know me. I'm another one of those people who tend to end up everywhere. John and I, John is standing in the back, he's my husband. I don't know how long I knew Reuven. I kept finding him at folk dance events. He'd come folk dancing, and he'd be leaping off the ground all over the place. I have a little button at home. It says, Israeli dancers are up by leaps and bounds, which is, some of the dances are just that way. They're very joyous. And, I remember him dancing many times, and I remember, I didn't get a chance to talk to him much for a long time, because, he'd be gone about the time that, I'd pay attention. Then, I started going to Havar Shir Hadash when it was in existence, and I took 10 years worth of Hebrew from Rabbi Les, and I kept finding him there as well as here when I came to things here, and I just kept seeing him. And then we were at the co-op, and he was at the co-op, and John and I would be talking to him, and then we'd look at the clock. It's been 2 hours. We have to go home sometime. And we would talk about everything from theology, God, Christianity, atheism, the environment, I mean, you name it. We would talk about anything, and then we would realize that, you know, things are going to melt, and we do have to leave. We have a home. We don't live at the co-op, and at some point they're going to sweep us out the door. But I've had some really, really deep discussions with him, and I think the first thing I ever said to him that shocked him, I think, was I suggested jokingly that I wanted to start a female group called Meshuggah Shiksas. And he looked at me and he said, "Do you know what shiksa means?" I said, "Well, yeah, but that was a joke, and I didn't think anybody wanted to do it really." Though it's an idea. Anyway, I found out, it was a real shock, I found out about his death through a really strange circumstance. I asked my friend Croy, who is now in North Carolina, in Raleigh, North Carolina. I texted him, "How are things doing?" He said, "Did you hear about Reuven?" I said, "What?" And he said, "He died." I said, "What?" And he sends me a text. He says, "Well, my friend Dana posted it on Facebook." And, you know, I haven't been watching Facebook at all. And I said, "Is this the Reuven that I think it is?" And he posts the picture. And I'm like, "No." Another friend, "No, you can't do this to me." But, you know, so I find out from Raleigh, North Carolina, that somebody here died. And then, you know, I didn't know when any funerals or memorial services or anything were going to happen. And then finally, I find out that it's on my birthday. Thank you. So happy birthday, I think. Anyway, the last conversation I had with him, he was, you know, "Well, Chabad needs more women." I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm not Jewish." My mom had a best friend who was Jewish, and she kind of adopted me, but not literally. And I don't think they want me. Besides, unless I can sit there and read the Torah and daven with them, I'm not interested. And he says, "Yes, but Yvonne, you have a Jewish soul." Thank you, Reuven. Thank you so much. Because before she died, before I moved up here actually, my Jewish mom said to me, "Yvonne, you could be Jewish. My son, he's getting married to a shiksa, but, you know, she's never going to be Jewish. She's trying to study for it. But Yvonne, you could be Jewish." So I was like, okay, you know. So I've been telling people that I'm a Catholicisca Jew for a long time. I guess it's going to stick. Anyway, and, you know, I really do miss him. I'm going to go home after this. I'm going to pull out my clarinet. And I'm going to play klezmer.
I said this at the other memorial at the Vets Hall. For me, our encounters were always just about the same. And I will hear his voice forever. And so Bumblebee! He always said that to me because I'm Devorah, and that means the bee. And then he said, you know that your name means Bumblebee. You'd always say that to me. And I said, "Yeah, Reuven, you've told me this a jillion times." I used to think of him as Super Jew. He was just, that was my little nickname. I guess we could add a little cape to that because I'm hearing about all the mitzvot he did in his character of Super Jew. And we didn't hang out a lot, but one time I got to be on an Amtrak bus to the Bay Area, so we had 6 or 7 hours, and that's when we really got down and I found out about his life, which was his childhood and his rough childhood, and I got to understand why he was the crazy boy that we know and love. I still see him. I see people look like him all the time. Blessings.
Oh man. Reuven. Ruvy. We used to call him Groovy Ruby. He, yeah, there's so many things that can be said, and it's hard to put it all into words. I met Reuven through, I met a couple of Jews on campus when I got here. It was my first year at Humboldt State University, and we were all hanging out on the quad there at the university one day at lunchtime, and there's like music playing, and there was this proselytizing pastor, like kind of new age, the extremists, like, you fornicating college students, you're all, gonna perish, and that was right when I met these three Jews. Like, we were kind of like looking at the sky and looking at each other, and just, guys hanging out on the quad, and hey, da-da-da, what's your name? And that's how I met Jesse Barber, Yeshai, and Adam King, who some of you may know too. They were all students here for several years. And Adam, we called him Ryan at the time. He wasn't going by his Hebrew name. Said, I know this guy Reuven, and he has these Shabbat lucks at his house. And I was like, what's a Shabbat luck? And he's like, it's a Shabbat potluck. And so, let's go have Shabbat together. And so we rode our bikes over there, and it's this little apartment, and we go in, and everything's all set up. Like, there's a round table in the middle of the room, and all the chairs and the couches are like skirted to the outside of the room, so there's plenty of room for people to sit, but also get to the Shabbat table. The Shabbat table was like a very important, just some of those central, elements of the Shabbat service were very important to him, and the way that the challah was dressed, and that the Kiddush cup would be placed and ready for praying and celebrating, and that night changed my life. I had never experienced a Shabbat like that. Like, just in a circle in a living room with friends, like singing and being joyful and happy. I remember joyful Shabbats growing up, but it was like, I don't know, it was more of an isolated thing, a family thing, and to be out here where there aren't a lot of Jews, and to all of a sudden have like this Jewish family. So yeah, that was in 2003, and by 2006 I was roommates. We were roommates. Reuven and I had started living together. I was living with another friend of mine at the time, and he invited his girlfriend to come over, and it was just not a good situation. I was just talking, Reuven and I were going on a hike one day or something. I was talking about how, there are dramas too much and stuff, and he said, come stay in my spare room, it's like, everyone knows how generous Reuven was, and he would have done that for any of us in this room, anyone in this room. It wasn't like he particularly liked me or thought I was going to bring young, pretty college girls over to his house, or, well, maybe he did, but he never asked me for anything. He never wanted anything from me. He never, he did want to be close to his friends, and he wanted his friends to celebrate him just like any of us do, but he never wanted that enough to ask for it or to try to push for it. Like, I've heard people talking about him bringing people together and remembering their faith, and Judaism has always been special to me, but that night that I had Shabbat at Reuven's house, it became like this light inside of my soul, and I've met so many of my best friends through him, and some of those people are in this room today, and I miss you, brother. I love you. God bless you, man.
I said this also at the other memorial, but the main thing that I would share about Reuven is that he was so exquisitely sensitive and tuned in to whoever he was talking to. And I never told him that I was really into learning. I never told him that I enjoy teaching. But every time I saw him, and it was usually here in a big crowd, every time I saw him, he would rush up to me and say, "Did you know blah, 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 blah." And if I said, "No, I didn't know that, Reuven," he'd be just like, whoa! He'd be so excited that he had taught me something. And if I said, "Yeah, I did know that, Reuven," he'd be, whoa, so excited that we could share knowing that thing. And so, no matter what it was, he was like, he would just tune into where I was, and I hear that in everybody's connections with him. Just wherever someone was, he'd be there. And I am totally convinced he was a Lama
I just want to share one beautiful story that got ignited by what people said. So one of the last times I saw him, my daughter Ileana was visiting, and I forgot this. She told me she had seen him recently at the farmer's market. So she had her baby at that time, 3 months old. And we're at the farmer's market, and you see all these people there, and it gets almost overwhelming, but he was dancing. I said, "Hey, do you want to say hi? Ileana's baby's here." And he came up and he greeted Ileana the baby, and actually that moment when he greeted the baby, it's like the earth, just him looking at Ileana being a new mom and the baby, it was just like, he just didn't talk. He just looked. He had that calm ecstasy or something like that. And she totally remembered that moment. She only hardly seen him since she moved away. But I just watched him greet this new life and this new mom, and it's like their souls almost matched or something. The simplicity of the baby and the newness and the freshness and the pride and the delight of Ileana and him. It's just, we all know Reuven has a smile that many times comes in many situations. And we have even photos around us with beautiful smiles. But that particular greeting was like he recognized the news. Everything that one could say about new life was in his eyes and his smile, and it was just. And she, when I told him about Reuven, she also, people go around that. Oh, how nice you have a new baby. It was just significant because he met the baby. He met the baby with the freshness and newness that we tend to overlook or forget or be too complicated to retain. Lord, dear.
Well, there's lots of incidents I could say, but probably one of the most meaningful was him and I were talking, and for some reason we got on this, have you ever went on a trust walk? Now, I don't know if anybody here knows what a trust walk is or not. I said, yes, have you ever gone on one at night? And he's like, yeah, I have. Pretty much everything I said was, yes, he has, and then he goes to explain it to me he was here. And this particular time, it's like, yeah, you go out and you close your eyes. You keep your eyes closed no matter how much you want to open up because it's dark. But you can't tell it's dark because you got your eyes closed. And you keep them closed long enough to where you're actually hearing the sounds of the forest. And you're hearing the birds rustle. And He said, it's just like going up to anybody. Y'all have a light inside you. And that's what he saw when he looked at everybody, was y'all's light. And that meant so much to him. And he told me, it's like every time you go up to somebody, you're touching somebody's life. And you're touching another life, and you're touching another life. And with each light that you see in each other, it goes on to infinity. And that one thing, just talk about a smile. I mean, the guy was just glowing as we were discussing this. And we weren't even in the forest when we were talking about it. I think we were like in the Winco parking lot. but that was probably one of the most meaningful times for me. I just wanted to share it with you.
I first want to say how honored I feel to be in this sacred place with you beautiful people who all loved Reuven so much. To just, wow, this temple is beautiful. And the energy here is just, wow. I met Reuven, and he was one of the first people I met in 1994 when I moved here, and I had a housewarming party, and I didn't know anybody. And all these people showed up, all these bands, hundreds of people showed up at my house in Fieldbrook. And there was Reuven, and he was just, I'm Reuven. And I was like, whoa, you know? And he said he was Jewish, and I go, I need a Jewish friend in Arcata, because I knew Devorah, but I knew very few people here. So I was like, yay, you know, because I love diversity and culture, and, you know, I love people of all religions, and, you know, and he's just always so beautiful. And then I see him everywhere, you know, and I do festivals for a living. So he was always at the North Country Fair. He was always on the plaza on the 4th of July, and he was always at the Benbow Fair and dancing to the music. And he came to our wedding in 2006. And he called me up the day before, and he said, you know, I want to wear my yarmulke to your wedding. It's just, you know, and he said I wear it to real sacred events. And I said, and I started crying on the phone, please, Reuven, wear your yarmulke to my wedding, you know. And then there was like 4 or 5 guys wearing their yarmulkes, and I felt so honored, you know. And Island was there. Beautiful, thank you, Island, for being such a good friend to him and me and the community, and, you know. And I saw him at a music festival the last time I saw him in Blue Lake, just like last month, or like 6 weeks ago, when he came running up to me, Rayla! You know, and he was just always this beautiful beam of light everywhere he went. And, you know, I'm gonna miss him, you know, every music festival or gathering or party. Or he also came to my 50th birthday party, and, you know, he's definitely like A on my party list, and, you know. And I have his address, and, you know, I'd always, whenever he moved, he'd give, oh, let me give you my new address for your, you know, party, you know, invites, you know. And so we're really gonna miss him. I was just looking through my photo albums, and there he was, my 50th, my wedding, all the different Gemini parties I've had at my land, and, you know, he's definitely, you know, was a big part of my life, and he always will be in my heart. Thank you very much, everyone.
Well, my husband and I go back way a long time ago when Reuven was our neighbor, and he'd walk by our house. He didn't know me, or he didn't know Gary happened to be Jewish, but he came over and he just started to ask if I needed help, and he was helping around the house and everything like that. And from that, he helped put up a sukkah for us, and I don't know, that's not the story I want to tell though right now. I want to say that at the burial, this woman was standing there, and she's looking around, and she says, "So, who are all these people? And how do they know this man?" Because when I met him, he was alone. And I would see him at festivals, always by himself, dancing off by himself, alone. But I would have a really intense conversation with him. And she says, "So, how do all these people know this person that was a loner?" And I looked at her and I said, "Because when he was with you, you see, he would just make you feel like you're the most important person in the world. So we all feel that way." And she said, "I didn't even know he was Jewish. I mean, we didn't even talk about that." So he touched more than just these lives. Obviously, this woman thought enough about him to come to this memorial where she didn't know anybody, she didn't know what it would be like, and she just said that she loved him so much and was going to miss him. So I just, yeah, that's an important story to tell. Anyway.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you, Jane.
I've known Reuven so long that I couldn't remember exactly when he got here and when we met and what happened. And I started thinking back, and I came up here to live in '87, and then around '88 or '89, I met a guy when I was living in my camper, driving around. It snowed in like '88, and I was looking for a place to park near the university, and I ran into a friend of mine, Lucas Kibbe. He wanted to come today to see Anna, the Holocaust survivor, and he was at every farmer's market like Reuven, but he recently gotten divorced and was lonely and talked about his ex-wife, had no kids, but he reached out to me, we hung out, and we became friends, and he said, "You're Jewish," and he was the first person that acted like Reuven would with me. And he reached out, talked about his Jewish heritage. He was from Santa Monica, and I grew up in Venice, and we talked a lot about that. And then I realized that it was like in the early '90s, a few years later, that I met Reuven when he first came here, and he was like Lucas. He was just really reaching out to me and saying, "You're Jewish. You should know about your heritage. Who's your family? Where are you from?" And then he would say things like, "Do you know Bob Dylan's Jewish?" And he goes, "Why?" In like Los Angeles. And then he would say things like we were trying to save Headwaters Forest, and we're doing this stuff. And he goes, you know, Bill Graham died, but do you know that his son is an environmentalist, and he's Jewish? And he wants to help us, and we're going to save the forest with, and that Bill Graham's son is going to get us into concerts and help us save the forest and do environmental work, because he's Jewish and he cares about the earth, and we're going to do all this stuff. So, but he reached in a lot deeper, and he went deeper, and he started asking about my family, and my mom died when I was a little kid. That's my Jewish side, so I didn't really know, but he started teaching me Yiddish and saying all these words, and getting really involved in this and reaching out, and just the brotherhood, and then talking about Shayna's, and he was modeling for art classes, and he talked about that, and we went to see music and drink beer and hang out, and he would always tell me that this person's Jewish or that person's Jewish. It was kind of like the Adam Sandler song. And he's the one who really got me to explore my Judaism and reconnect with it. And more than that, he was just a really dear, sweet friend. And I've always had a deep sense of compassion and hurt, and he's like 10 times deeper than that. And he just, you could tell that he felt everyone's pain, not just his own. And he had the most deep empathy and caring. And one of my friends, he's kind of wealthy, he goes to a lot of concerts, a promoter. He says, I could just see Reuven at a concert and go up to him and grab his beer and have a sip, and Reuven would go, oh, you know, instead of go get your own beer or what, you know, Reuven would just go, sure, you know. You know, he was that, he had that amount of love and empathy in him. And you wouldn't think, you know, hey, this guy can afford his own beer, I can barely, you know, afford a place to live. And he was always more concerned about you than his own needs, always. And I don't know, he taught me to love myself and to love others and to be more compassionate and to love the earth and to really deeply care and to feel it, to grieve when there's a loss. And today, I think I can finally, it's hard, but I think that we can keep his spirit alive and start to move forward. And it's such a deep loss that it's taken this long to get there for me. It really has. And he helped me get to that point. And the thing is that he's done this with almost everyone he's touched. And to put that out emotionally, it's amazing, you know, to have that kind of empathy and caring for anyone, you know, when you put yourself aside and just go deep into trying to understand or feel someone else. He's the most selfless person I've ever met. And I love him, and I want to keep his spirit alive and figure a way to let it go, but keep it alive. Keep the candle burning, and the spirit, and everything that we've done this past month is helping me. And I think helping him, and you know, through him we can keep it real. And I love him, and I didn't. If he hadn't passed, I wouldn't have learned everything that about him and his history. You know, he brought everyone together. You know, and it's sad that his passing is what it took to bring us so close. And thank you all for being part of his life. And, yeah, 93, 94. Thanks.
Thanks, Reuven. I remember when you lived there. This is good.
I'll be quick.
Take your time, Michael. It's important.
Have you ever heard of Shlomo docs or how many people did he say that to here, right? Yeah, like Shlomo Carlebach, an Orthodox, like he's hippie docs, right? Like, Usher Island back there has a lot of those Reuvenisms. You know, he taught me, and I'm sure many other people, to look somebody in the eye and say, I love you. Yeah. You know, that's like amazing, right? Friends. He became family, you know. I think probably one of the hardest, you know, like maybe we'd go on a trip, spend a few days together, go somewhere, and we'd come back. And then it would be so hard, like, to say goodbye, because he's like, it was hard for him to leave too, and I had to like go to work or something. He's like, so like, you're going to work now? I'm like, damn. And that was really hard because, and I think because of his intensity that we love so much, honestly, it could also be hard to have that deep, long relationship, spending weeks or months together, right? Because he was this gift, but that could be the other side of it. And I think that was probably a pretty tough thing for him because he knew it. He knew that also. And I think he filled that with all this love that he would have with people, right? I mean, he was he only had good things to say. Everybody here, he would say things to us about everybody else here, all good things. And he was the matchmaker, right? He was the matchmaker. Oh, you should meet this person, you know? And, you know, I think the first time I met him was at down there for Rosh Hashanah, like 16 years ago. right? And Usher, you were there and stuff, and yeah, it was cool. We were camping out, right? We were there for maybe Yom Kippur. It was Yom Kippur, and it was a beautiful service. So, I guess now I'm gonna have to go to the what is it? Oh, the Jewish camp at the Rainbow Gathering, right? You talk about that a lot, and I'd be like, it's such a weird thing, huh? Shalom, yeah.
Oh, that's great.
I think I'd have to go. Like, I'm not a hippie, but I think I'm gonna go just because that's just. Anyway, like all of us, I love him so much and miss him so much, and I feel like we were all so blessed to have him, in our lives. He was great. Thank you.
Precious stories, precious stories.
Can I just say something from my chair? I just don't want to.
Sure,
I don't like talking in front of crowds and stuff.
Of course.
The story is this. He liked all different religions and everything, and I had a car, and he was having problems riding his bike a lot because of he told me the winters were getting hard. And he said to me, Cheryl, please, I want to go to the synagogue. I'm like, well, what's it? And I honestly, I really have not been going to synagogue. I've kind of turned to Buddhism. And I was actually, like a Jew though, back home, I would go to like Buddhist things, which my brother didn't know about, by the way. That was a few years ago, and then I just stopped religion altogether. And I said, well, where do you want to go? He's like, well, you have a car. I'm like, well, it's Mike's car. Yeah, I have a car. And I was watching Mike's house, and he says, I want to go, that Saturday morning, I want to go to temple. And I'm like, okay. So I walk in, and I'm like, I thought we were going to services. He goes, well, it's not services. They have this potluck breakfast thing, and they do this, like, Torah study. So I walk in, and I'm like, what's going on here? I'm thinking I'm going to, like, your service, Rabbi, which is what I'm used to. I'm not used to going to Torah study. When I was in Hebrew school, I went to, like, So I went there, and I'm so grateful I did. He really wanted to go. It was the winter time, and he really couldn't ride his bike, and he just wanted to get here. So I took him, and I was grateful to do that because I got to meet Amanda and Jerry and just all the people that he really loved. And he made me then I took him to the Universal Church. Well, the Universal. What is that?
Unitarian?
I took him to the Unitarian Church, Unitarian one day, because that's where he wanted to go. So I drove him there. I know a lot of people here don't really understand my relationship, because I really only knew Reuven. I came back down in August, last year in August, and I got to know him a little bit. Michael had taken me to a Star Wars thing, I don't know, some weird thing on Wednesday nights. They have this thing. What is it called, Michael?
ATL, Sci-Fi and Plane Things.
And we went there, and the first time I really got to know Reuven, I met Reuven at my brother's son's bar mitzvah, his house. And I don't really remember, but we went to Sci-Fi, and here's this guy, we're drinking a beer, and he didn't stop talking. I was having my own problems. I've been going through my own stuff. I'm not ashamed to say it. I hadn't left my house in 3 years, only to walk my dog, and I'm going through my own mental health stuff. And I'm not ashamed of it. There's been stuff that's happened in my past, and I'm working through it. And, but Reuven helped me get out. And I don't think anybody realizes how much he really helped me just to get out and do things. And he was my gift, and I really miss him very, very much. And I hear stories about people knowing him for 25 years, and I'm just glad I met him and knew him for as short a period of time as I did. But one thing you should know is I spent a lot of time with him. He stayed over at Mike's house. He slept upstairs. I slept downstairs. I was very sick. I got that Humboldt crud thing, whatever crud. I couldn't move. I was really, really sick. And Mike and Hope were away on a cruise, and he was taking care of Obi, walking Obi for me, and we just had a special bond and a special relationship that I don't want to sound curt to you, but I am from New Jersey, but I don't care what anybody else thinks about my relationship with Reuven. We were close. He was like my big brother. You know, he was like my big brother. He looked out for my brother. He would always say to me, you know, he would repeat things. It was funny, and he would act like, oh, I didn't say that, you know. But one thing he would say to me is, gotta have hope. You gotta have hope. He would say that about Mike's wife, Hope. And I always remember that about him. You gotta have hope. You gotta have hope. And, he just had a special light about him, and his sense of humor I really got. He was funny, but yet obnoxious sometimes, like me. We had a lot in common. We really did. We had a lot in common, and I'm so glad I was able to drive him places. Then in the wintertime, he really, he did take the bike and he took the bus, but he was getting tired. And it was very hard for him to get around. And one thing he would say to me, Cheryl, is, I don't like to ask people for help. No. And I would say to him, but Reuven, if they're your friends and your family, they don't mind you asking them for help. They don't mind. And he would say to me, but I feel comfortable with you. So he would ask me for help. He would ask me for a lot of help. And I didn't mind. I had all the time to help him drive him around and do the things that he enjoyed doing. And he showed me the redwood forest, and he showed me, we took a ride. I wanted to see sunflowers. Sunflower is my favorite flower. And Reuven told me it was his. I don't know if that's true, but he said it was. He took me to a sunflower place, like a farm. We took a ride out to
Redwood Ridge Farm?
it's all the way, no, it's where they have the
Mad River?
Oh, yeah. It's that way. I think it's that way.
Oh.
I don't know. Where the places, but I don't know. We ended up at this really cool place. I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm not from around. I'm not going to apologize.
There's like 100 farms around here.
I just don't know. But we went to the the cheese place. He loved that place. He knew I like cheese. Let's go to cheese factory. Cheese factory. One thing he thanked me for is he had told me some stories that he did some modeling. I know that. And at Redwood, what's the name of that place? The college.
College of Redwood.
So he would just do new. And I was appalled. I'm like, what? But for him, it was like just part of his nature and his culture and who he was and what he was. And he was just so humbling and so just special. And I wanted to go to the botanical gardens in Redwood. And I took him to the botanical gardens, and he thanked me. I was actually taking care of their dog, Jerry and Amanda's dog. And we took the dog, and the three of us went to Redwood to the botanical gardens, and he just thanked me. He was so appreciative. He said, I can't believe this, Cheryl. He goes, I've lived here my whole life, for this many years. He said, I never went to the botanical gardens. But one thing you don't know about me is I love flowers. Okay, I'm very, very nature-oriented, and I love flowers, and that's one thing he and I have a lot in common. I felt very close to nature with him. And he would take me, and he wanted to do hiking, and I have some physical ailments, and he understood, and we didn't do the hiking. But, so I took him to botanical gardens. It was probably the best thing I ever did for him. And he told me, he just said to me, he goes, and if you've never been to the botanical gardens in Redwood,
College of Redwood.
The College of Redwoods, I would please beg every one of you to take a trip there. It is an amazing venue of different plants and agriculture from all around the world. And it's very enlightening. And we did that. He went for a hike, and I just stayed by the gardens, and I did that. But I just, some people thought I was crazy, which I am a little nuts. But I'm okay with that. But that I flew out here, for a friend of mine who died, and it's something I needed to do. I needed to be here. I needed to spend a little time here. I'm leaving tomorrow. I'm going back home. But I just needed to share this with you. And I appreciate every moment I had with him, and I appreciate all your stories. I do. And I love every one of you who took the time to really get to know him. because I feel that some people in the community didn't really understand Reuven, and they just, shut him out. And quite frankly, that's their loss. That's their loss. They never got to know the real Reuven when I got to know. I think part of the part that I love so much about Reuven was he was very childlike. And he was, because of that, he was probably the most honest, humble person you'll ever know. And one thing I've told people is the way I feel with the souls in a human being is the amount of footsteps you make in this world, wherever you've been, is where your soul will be spread out, like the seeds will be spread out throughout the world, And I feel like he did his work, and he planted a lot of seeds wherever his feet will walk, and that's truly how I feel. And I would hope that people here and in the community will really find this as a learning experience, as well as, he was a holy man, and, take what he brought to this earth and really learn from it and do your good and pay it forward. And that's all I ask, and, I'm going to Portland tomorrow, and I'll go back to Jersey on next Tuesday, but I'm gonna go to Critter Lake, because we were supposed to go there and we never made it.
That's a beautiful place.
Yeah. So that's one reason why I want to go to Critter Lake. It's one of my brother's favorite places. I thank each and every one of you for your stories, and I hope I hear more stories. But I needed to say what I needed to say and what I wanted to say. But thank you, and thank you too.
Thank you.
Just pay it forward. That's all I ask. Pay it forward.
Hi. I want to say I've known Reuven since probably the late 80s, when I was probably a child in junior high school. My father did homeless activism work back then, and I remember he would have kind of these, back then there were a lot of hippies around, and he'd have these hippie types that came in, and I remember Reuven showed up often back then, and I assumed that he must have done homeless activism work with my dad, because usually that's why they came within my dad's vicinity back then. So I remember he just kind of struck me as, he really stood out to me compared to other people that I've dealt with. I actually admired him, looking up to him as a young child back then, and so he kind of like stayed in my memory. And then after I graduated high school, I kind of went in the military and moved to Eureka and kind of went away for a while, and then kind of came back, and then I bumped into him again and kind of stayed in touch with him over the years, and we kind of maintained a friendship. We've gone hiking together in the deep redwood forests. I did some theater, and I would actually allowed him to watch one of my plays for free. I remember he was living in Arcata, and he insisted on riding his bicycle all the way to Eureka to come see the play, even though I offered to drive him. But he wanted to ride his bicycle in the rain, because he didn't want to put me through any trouble, I guess. But I offered to give him a ride, but he didn't want it. And but he saw the play, and I think the last time I saw him was at Arts Alive, and I had a feeling, when I saw him last, that maybe something was a little off, not about him, but just that, maybe in the back of my mind subconsciously that maybe that was like the last time I would see him. And but we had a pleasant interaction, and I'm thankful for the time I got to be his friend and experience the pleasure of knowing him, and I just wish him the very best throughout eternity, and everyone else that knew him. I feel him here now. So, thank you.
Try not to be too emotional. That's nice.
You were his best friend.
So, back to how I met Reuven was on campus at HSU. When was it? Yeah, it was at HSU, and he was part of the Jewish League of Humboldt State. What's it
Student
called?
Union?
Jewish Student Union. Yeah. And 2001, 2000. Yeah. So we connected, pretty strong, and he was putting tefillin on people, and trying to do another good deed for the day. And so I really, connected with this man because he brought me to Shabbat, and he invites me over for Shabbat, and that basically blew my mind, like a Reuven style, Orthodox hippie style, Ortho, Shlomo, what do you call it, hippies? Shlomo docs. He had all these, he had the one-liners down. I don't know how it was, but he had the greatest, funniest jokes sometimes. And so yeah, Shabbat back then was with him, like Avi described it, was like, wow, it's something that you would never experience before. Like, I remember going to, as a kid and throughout my life, having Shabbats, but there was nothing like a Reuven Shabbat, We would have a big potluck and a big circle, and Jews and non-Jews, and it just felt like you're at home, like everybody's a part of your community is there, and it was irrelevant, again, Jewish, not Jewish, it was like really rich and singing songs and just really special, something that you don't get to see and experience every day. And so I kept that in my mind, and I also wanted to do it again, so next Friday and the next Friday, so we had as many Shabbats as I can ever imagine counting, and so sometimes I would try to host it and try to help, and I just noticed from that time that this man was so dear and so giving and loving and sharing, and his home was your home, and you always felt like, you're at home with Reuven. It's like, it's hard to describe because you don't get that feeling with anyone, just anyone in the world, and Reuven was all about, making sure you're okay, you're comfortable, and please eat some food. And another thing is, with food, he would always make sure that last person was fed till he was ready to eat. And it's like, it's above and beyond me. I don't think in my lifetime I'll ever experience seeing another human as kind and generous as Reuven was. And when I spoke to his brother, right after Reuven was passed, so we came from Israel recently, and another thing is, and we kept in really good, close contact. And so for some reason, he wasn't texting me, contacting me anymore. And it was about 7 days, and there's something going on, there's something up. And I was like, on the 6th day, I was like, spoke with my wife, and she said, we both agreed maybe I should make a missing persons report. And sure enough, I'm the last person to do anything like that, but I did it. And it was like, just after that happened, I got this call late afternoon, and it was the hardest call, to receive from anybody about your dear favorite, We were best friends. He was my best friend for sure. And the coroner explains, and it's like what you see in the movies, like, no, this couldn't be right, this couldn't be true, and it's my Reuven, and he said, I'm sorry. Are you sitting down right now? And explain that. And prior to that, Avi called me and he said that you want to call this number because apparently they found somebody and I didn't want to believe it. And I was like, no, it's not Reuven. This is not Reuven. And so I'm always going back and wondering like how and what and did it happen, and because I was so close with this, we were we were brothers beyond, belief. Whether I was 7,000 miles away in Israel, or I was here, I was, anywhere, traveling. And so, that was my reality. And I'm thankful that I was here. Very, very grateful that I was at least present, but not grateful with the results initially, but it's going to take some time for me to process everything and deal with all this, the reality. But on another note, I remember bringing him to festivals, and I played a lot of live music, reggae, international famous artists from around the world, and I would always invite him and say, "Come on, Reuven, you got a backstage pass, just come, just show up." And he would show up, on his bicycle, and it was 38 degrees out, 40 degrees, and he'd come in his shorts. It was raining, freezing. I'm like, "Reuven, wear some pants, what are you doing?" And he's got chacos on. It's so Reuven. It's like, "Reuven, what do you..." "Oh man, it's just raining. I'm just, it's torture out there," whatever he would say. And, "Well, come on, get in here, man, have fun," And so, I wanted him to experience that, like, you're special, come in, man, you're taken care of. Help yourself with food, drinks, just have fun, dance, get out there, and music festivals, I got him to do promoting and flyering, and I was, again, just like, I wanted him, he deserved it, he was like, he was so open, so like into everything and loving, and everyone, the artists that I was performing with, they loved him too, and bringing him to Israel in 2007 initially was a special experience for him. I was doing a world tour with Pato Bantan, and he always said to me, I need to be shocked. You got to blow my mind, because I've seen everything. Just blow me away. Just, I don't care what it is. I'm like, okay, you're going to Israel. We got reggae, so we're all coming together. We're meeting. We're doing it. We're meeting at the airport and all this stuff. So I did a documentary about it, and Reuven's on there, and it was just so many memories. So much. It's like, I feel like I still have a lot of tears to shed, but it's going to take time, And so that was a great experience. I arranged it till we performed in an environmentally awareness type of an elementary school in Israel, and we played it at kibbutz, and we played in one of the biggest nightclubs in Tel Aviv, and it was just like go in the schedule, He loved it because it was like, "Come on, get up, man, we gotta go." It was like, okay, and it was like Reuven never complained, even though he had 2 hours sleep the night before. Just, okay, where do I sit? Should I sit there? Okay, get on the bus, let's go. We're moving. Come on, help. And he would load up equipment and guitars. And it's like never ever a complaint from this person. And that was Reuven. He would just, I don't know, I hope that we can all remember this, that what Reuven had to share with us in this 61 years of his life here on earth, like to give and to do endless mitzvahs, and from all parts of the world, that people, that remember him and know him, and where he walked, every step he took, and a little bit more, okay, if you don't mind. He loved Yiddish. Wow, Yiddish? Oh my gosh. Anything about Yiddish language, and not only will he start, but he won't stop. But he'll just go on and on about Yiddish and and all the many sayings. And he knew my grandmother spoke Yiddish, and he's like always say, "Would you tell them what your grandma said to you? Tell them everywhere he went, And it was a blessing to bless people, when you part, and she was very dramatic, and so she would say this saying with two different things: "Agiten, maluchten, zalten, hiten, amazel dikashu." and a couple other things. But that means may you always be blessed with luck and love and all of your life. And then another one was Gaben Just Design. He loved that one. It was like, may you continue to be blessed in life from this moment on and till we meet again, as we part. And so, just so much information. He would always tell me I'm overload. It's too much. I've got to take a break or whatever. But he had a great sense of humor. Great person. And he loved Shoshana. He loved Naomi. He loved everybody and everyone. Cheryl. He would love Mike. He would love Donna. He loved all these familiar faces. Just everybody. It's like you never heard him say nothing would come bad about the people that really cared about him in this community, Danny. And it's like, I want to remember that, and just thanks for letting me express myself. And
Thank you.
I feel like someone told me the other day or a week ago, like I was his brother's keeper, and it's not going to be the same not being able to call him or him calling me, but we all have to go someday. That's what I have to remind myself. And I see my beautiful son that loved him as well. The reality is that's the truth. We all eventually, we're here temporarily, and nothing's permanent. And make the best of every second, every moment. This conversation, this time, it's all holy. It's all precious. And not to waste time bickering and arguing. I'm one to talk with my wife, but aside from that, thank you again.
I wanted to ask if any of the kayakers were here. Some of them were going to come.
And I will tell their story.
I have a question. I have two questions for you. Is on the perfect people thing, the 11 night or whatever, the 36, is that 3 per tribe? And then the next question is there always 36? Like when one passes on, does one come?
It's a custom that there are 36 hidden saints who their holiness is so great that it's hidden from themselves, and that they sustain the world.
Yeah.
And that in every generation there will always be the Lamed Vavnikim, these 36 folks. I happen to live on Highway 36, so there was a lot of joking about, you're the Lamed Vavnik Rebbe. So I'll share, in hearing these stories, I started reflecting on how long I'd known Reuven and what a very important part he was in our family life. Because if I met him right around 1990, our kids were pretty little, and we were just starting to have Shabbats out at our house in Carlotta, which is a good 45-50 minutes from here. And we didn't come into town very much, and somehow we got to know Reuven better, and some other gentlemen his age, and they would come down together for Shabbats at our house and stay over, always to stay over, usually Friday night and Saturday night too. And we called them the Joy Boys. We were saying, the Joy Boys coming this week? Oh, the Joy Boys are coming. It was so uplifting. And at that time, we were the caretakers of the Garberville, the B'nai Ha'aretz Sefer Torah, the Torah scroll, stayed at our house. And we would get it out and roll it out on the picnic table every Shabbos morning. And when Reuven was there, he would read the entire portion of the week from the scroll. And he was reading phonetically. He did not necessarily comprehend every word he was saying, but he kind of would go into an altered state and just zzz, zzz, zzz. And we'd be following along in our chumashim, and he'd zzz, zzz. And he had told us how some traumatic experiences he had and struggles with Jewish identity and struggles with finding place. And I felt that when he went into that zone and he just went through the entire Torah portion and outside, in the air, at the picnic table, that I felt that the words of the Torah really functioned like mantra for him. That they were profoundly powerful. It was very powerful for us to hear it. And he was tremendously instrumental in my becoming a rabbi, because he was inspiring, he was knowledgeable, he had this beautiful Yiddish soul. And my children's first experiences of Shabbos, it was with Reuven coming down and doing all this stuff and teaching us songs. So he was there, of course, for my daughter's bat mitzvah, for my son's bar mitzvah. He was there for weddings. He was there for my parents' funerals. He was there for many extended family events. Very, very powerful. And as years went by and I got much busier with commitments, I saw him less and less, which I deeply, deeply regret. I deeply regret. But I did see him at the Arcata Playhouse a little while ago and was able to show him a little video of my new granddaughter. And since he had known my daughter when she was a little girl, he said, "Oh, this is Miradina's baby." I said, "Well, she's Rivka, named after my mother, Riva." And so he never got to actually meet the baby. Jerry, when you told the story, I had a great pang that he never got to meet the baby. But he saw her, and it was a delightful little video, and he went, "This is Rivka, like your mom. This is Rivka. Oh, like your mom. This is Rivka. Yeah, this is terrific." And I said, "We'll have you over. As soon as things settle down, you'll come, you'll meet the baby. We'll have Shabbos together." So we'll have Shabbos in heaven. Is anyone else burning to speak who did not get to speak?
Do you want me to tell the kayak story or not? Because they couldn't come.
One more story. The story of the kayak.
So many of you, when Reuven passed, we don't know exactly what happened, but he fell, and he fell at a part of the coast that people get lost. The water, people have been lost there. Even somebody knew that somebody fell there and they can't find the body. But Reuven, being who he was and having the angels that he had in his life and watching over him, so it was really within, Osher talked about not having seen him for 6 or 7 days, but several people saw him on Saturday at the farmer's market and then in the afternoon, and he said he was going to his favorite place to take a walk, and somehow he fell, and it's really within a very short amount of time, Sunday morning, that these kayakers, and it's like a church service for them, they go out on the ocean, and they happened to be going north. They could have been going south. They could have been going wherever they were going, but they were going, and they noticed his body, and they, knew what to do, and they called the Coast Guard, and they was not easy, but they went into this place where they had seen him, and they gently did what they needed to do, following the instructions, and they pulled him into the water, and the Coast Guard said, "Can you take him to the College Cove beach?" And they said, "Sure, yes," and slowly, and they said, don't take him out of the water, because until we can tell you that we're there, and it's not an easy thing to get there with a search and rescue team and all these things. So the kayakers came to the memorial that we had at the Vets Hall, and they shared this story, and it's because Osher and some other people went to meet these kayakers to find the story. So there's always more layers to anything with Reuven. So these amazing stories that and I didn't know this until they shared it, they basically had him in the center, in the water, for 2 hours. Like, they were sitting around him, holding him in a circle.
And there were how many of them?
There was 10 of them. Oh, so if you're Jewish, 10 is like, it's a minion. We guard our dead. We never leave them alone after they've died until they're in the ground. And the Chabad community and this greater community managed to do that as well. Once we knew where he was, there were people sitting outside the coroner's office. But his first, how many people get that kind of an escort?
And they were touched by it. So
they were very moved, and they were really, it was important to them to hear our stories. So this doesn't happen to everyone. So I just, again, to reinforce the magic of this man, that he could have been lost to us and we all would have been wondering where he was, you know, but that's not what happened. And his soul has always been up above, but we now know too that his body was sheltered and watched beautifully, and in an incredible way, as his first, and then until we put him in the ground, which was also felt really good to actually know that he was solidly similar. So I just wanted to share that. And they wanted to come, but they've had to tell this story many times, and I'm sharing it for them, and we're very grateful to them.
Yeah.
I think that inside the cover of the Siddur, is there a little song sheet taped inside? Limnot Yameinu?
Yes.
Limnot Yameinu. Sing Limnot Yameinu, we'll have Kaddish and we'll eat. Let's go to page 40 for El Malay Rachamim. Let's all rise. Page 40. Page 40. Page 40. Reuven's Hebrew name is for
Reuven Uri ben David Vafegala.
Reuven Uri ben David Vafegala. Together in English softly.
God full of compassion, you dwell in lights and in gifts. Grant perfect rest under the wings of your presence to our loved one who has entered eternity. Let him find refuge forever in the shadow of your wings, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life. For you, the everlasting God, are his inheritance. May he rest in peace, and let us say, Amen.
Reuven Uri ben David Vafegala.
Okay.
El Malay שוכן במרומים, המוצא מנוחה נכונה, תחת כנפי השכינה, עם קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע מסריחים את נשמת ראובן אריאל בן דוד ופגלל, שהלך לעולמו בעל הרחמים, יסתירהו בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו, ינוח בשלום על משכבו. Aleinu on the opposite page. Aleinu shaber adon hakol, לתת כדאי יוצא בראשית, שלא שמנו יעצור, ולא שמנו כמשפחת האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהן, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו הורים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו Kaddish is on the opposite page. Who else is saying Kaddish? Give me the names of those for whom you're saying. Caroline. Anyone else saying?
Louis Harris.
We say Kaddish in honor of my mother's families.
Gentlemen, is saying Kaddish for anyone else? Anyone else saying Kaddish for? My dad, I would. I remind you, my dears, the Kaddish says nothing about death or afterlife. It's all words of praise of the divine, which we say in honor of the departed. So, the Neshama Zolchovan and Aliyah, it's for another Aliyah. Every time we say Kaddish, it's another Aliyat HaNefesh for the one that we love so much. Just as we were learning today in the forest, every time we do a mitzvah in someone's memory, now often we think of tzedakah. Of course, it's very wonderful to give tzedakah in someone's memory, and that helps people immediately, helps those who are suffering, but also to do acts of tzedek, acts of righteousness in someone's memory. and the neshama has another aliyah, another uplift on the mysterious journey. Yikadal, Yikadal, Shemei Rabba, Ba'amat Yivarach Yotei, Yamlich Malchutei, B'chayechon, V'yomechon, V'chayech Kol Yisrael, Ba'ala B'zman Karim, V'mirim Amen. Yesh Shemei Rabba B'varach, La'olam V'lamei Almaya, Yivarach Yishtabach, V'arat V'hamam V'naseh, Yitadar, Yitaleh, Yitalal, Shmei B'shara, Briku, La'elam, Yikol, V'chata, V'shirata, Tushbachata, V'nata, Da'nevan, B'alam, V'mur, Amen. Yesh Shema, Mishmaya, V'chayim, Amen, V'kol Yisrael, V'mur, Amen. Oseh Shalom, V'ma, Huya Yaseh Shalom, Aleinu, V'kol Yisrael, Amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved. And let us say, Amen. Reuven's Hodu Ladonai Kito. We won't do all the words, but you'll just get what it is. Hodu Ladonai Kito, Ki leolam chazo. 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 Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la.